Well, I don't know what's going on. Well, neither do I. That's your job. That's the whole problem.
I thought you were going to say virtual PA
people
like
don't tell
an
me
AI
anything.
assistant or something.
It's a hologram.
You never know these days. All right, well, we don't have long, so I reckon we'll get into it. Let's start.
Crack on, you drive.
I will drive. Here we go. Excited to start. Hello and welcome to Performance Marketing Unlocked. And this is an extra special episode because, yes, we have Richard Hammond on the podcast today. He has come on with his managing director at DriveTribe, Dave Murdoch, to talk about DriveTribe, which has gone from being known as a fun YouTube channel to being a full-blown automotive media company. They're going to be talking about unlocking social channels as a brand in their own right and how to actually connect to a community, as well as the importance of data, creativity, and how this all works within the social media algorithms. But before we begin, I want to remind you that our Unlocked event is coming up. It is on March 5th and 6th, and it's what this podcast is all about. We are giving you a flavour of what to expect at this event with expert insights from the top in the industry. It is the most important performance marketing event in the UK. You do not want to miss it. So without further ado, let's begin the podcast. Welcome to the Performance Marketing Unlocked podcast. We have here today Dave Murdoch, DriveTribe's Managing Director. Hello, Dave.
Hello.
And we have Richard Hammond, DriveTribe's Creative Director and 1/3 of that iconic Grand Touring trio. Welcome to the studio.
I'm not really 1/3 by weight, though, am I? I'm about 1/10. I don't want to be rude, but thank you very much.
I know,
That's
well.
I don't know if you're disparaging yourself there
kind.
or the other two. It
Oh,
might
it's
be a
the
little
other
bit
two.
of both.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think I've heard you describe yourselves as all equally misshapen.
Yeah, I've always reckoned if you rolled the three of us into one big lump and then divided it into three equal parts, you'd have three reasonable human beings.
Well, there you go.
That's not possible.
You make the perfect team then in that sense.
That would work.
Well, and we're also joined by Joe Arthur, Senior News Reporter at PMW, and I'll be your host, Lucy Shelley. So let's get started with the podcast. I wanted to actually begin because I don't know if you know this. It's rather ironic that you've come here today because this is the company that James May was fired from.
Yes. But James May, like me, has been fired from pretty much every job he's ever had anyway. So
I think that's a
I
sign of
hate
true
to say
creative, that, isn't it?
There's no blue plaque on the door because it's not a very special event.
I know. Well,
Him
I
being
was speaking to some of our senior members around the office, and they said, "Oh
Been
yeah,
around the
I
block
was
for a
here. I
while."
watched him walk out the door," which I thought was brilliant. And yeah, so I think he gave us some of the autocar mags.
Was this the one he was fired from for putting a coded message? With
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Which
good.
is quite. It's quite good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd heard so many different
Very
versions
clever.
of that story. So yeah, it was nice to hear kind of the real one.
And it's a bit of folklore around the office sometimes. Yeah.
Anyway, so we are here to talk about DriveTribe, which is an automotive content production and marketing platform with over 10 million followers across all your social media. You get 10 million views a month. And Richard, I've heard you believe that DriveTribe is the perfect platform to look at and into a subject undergoing more change than at any time since its inception, which I thought was quite a fitting description because marketing is also quite similar in that sense. It's hugely changing. Dave, you'll know, and this year's going to be bigger than any other. So without further ado, let's begin the podcast.
Yeah, we'll jump right in. On that note of change, Dave, I'll start with you because it's something you mentioned previously. You talk about brands looking for partnerships versus campaigns. You mentioned that at the moment, brands seem to be looking for partnerships more so than campaigns at the moment. What do you think's driving that change? Why do you think that is?
I think there's probably a couple of things, really. First and foremost, the growth is in the digital and social space, and I think brands appreciate that. So there's a natural kind of organic movement towards more spend in that area. And then I guess it's going through a level of maturity. You know, the social space in particular is now, you know, years and years old, and actually it's gone through its Wild West period, I think. There still exists, don't get me wrong.
I think
we see it all
Elon
the
Musk
time.
makes it pretty wild.
Well,
West
quite,
still,
you know.
isn't it?
But I think in terms of kind of there are established channels and brands on those various platforms, and it's become, I guess, more of a safe space for brands. And certainly, you know, what we're seeing is they want less transactional relationships with those brands like ourselves. You know, they want more deeper, embedded, intertwined kind of relationships, which allow them, I guess, to take advantage of the credibility and the community that we've built up, and other channels, you know, in our space. I'm going to steal a phrase that one of our clients used back to me probably about 6 months ago, that talked about a trust transfer, which I love. I've coined it as my own. But essentially,
It's a new industry buzzword.
well, quite,
to go through,
and I may say that a number of times in this pod. But the what they are looking for is that transfer of trust from brands like ourselves, where we've got a community of people who watch our content, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, every single week on various different channels, and they trust us implicitly because we deliver great entertaining content to them. And if a brand can kind of weave themselves into that in a native way, and it's quite difficult to be able to achieve, but it's not impossible. It's really, there's a lot of depth to it, and there's a lot of brand value that can be established by that. So we're seeing words like omnipresence and kind of brands that want to be the synonymous kind of whether it's a tyre brand or aftermarket product with DriveTribe, so that the audience automatically thinks of that brand when they think of DriveTribe. And it's really exciting because again, it becomes less one-dimensional for publishers and the brands that they work with, and deeper, and more exciting because they want to take advantage of every facet of the business and every opportunity they can.
Well, and DriveTribe, you mentioned, it's not only got its online channels, but its offline ones as well with DriveTribe Live. And that's a really good place, I suppose, where brands and consumers can sort of interact in that space.
Absolutely.
We mentioned before we started recording, actually, this kind of magic that we're kind of seeing now. And I think especially when we're connecting the online and the offline and these the consumer relationships with brands, you're looking for that experience and that value, that trust transfer. If I was to use your word, I mean,
you've stolen it.
Oh, I know, they catch on far
You
too
didn't have
quick.
that.
I had it for about 5 minutes.
Yeah, well, you've now said it.
That's what happens in this industry. You go, that's good. I'm going to
Yeah, it's all about
I mean,
stealing
decks
ideas.
everywhere now.
Do you think part of that relationship you were talking about and the depth of that, possibly it's helped by our origin story, which I'd love to say we did it on purpose. But like everything in my life, particularly business-wise, it was an accident. But it was built as a community first. And it has that feel. So our relationship with everybody who consumes our content, that's what we led on. It's not hung on one particular face. It's not hung on me or any of the other people. It is its own thing. And we built it as a community from the outset, and it spent its first few years, and Dave was there from the start.
Almost the start,
Yeah, it spent its first few years focusing on that. And that's why we enjoy that relationship outward, which means that's what people can tap into.
An interesting thing for me as someone who's sort of seen a bit of DriveTribe's content before is the way that you have sort of integrated the DriveTribe personnel beyond just yourself. It's very odd to sort of see someone usually behind the scenes come forward and have a bit more of a sort of personality presence within the content.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Fernie is on pretty much everything we do as well. And it's for me, the most telling, I mean, bearing in mind, I'm not going to speak to the whole marketing thing of it. That's what Dave said. I just did the nice, simple stuff. But back to that community point, when we did our first live event last year, and that was another example of something that I'd been thinking for a while. I think we should do live stuff. But I don't know why I think that. And how we tend to work is I'll sort of float a thing to Dave. Dave, is it a good idea that we maybe do like live things? And he'll, I don't know. And then he'll come back to me and explain to me why it is a good idea.
Yeah.
And, that's what I was thinking, is it? Yeah, that's what you were thinking, Rich. But when we did that first live event, and you'll remember we had the stage and there wasn't a massive crowd. We were very... We're always conscious of being, pulled along by opportunity. So we're always quite lean and hungry. We didn't want to overdo it. We didn't want to make it too big. It was the right size to start. And when we stood on that stage, and there they all were, DriveTribers, and I remember saying, "This is so weird. It's like I've known you all, and you've all known each other for all these years, and now look at us. Here we are all together." And it felt fabulous community feel to it, which I think permeates everything we do. And I think people can see that we have that relationship, and it's important. And that's why people behind the scenes are seen. You were on stage. You weren't brilliant, but...
I literally told people where the toilets were.
It's an important thing to say,
Yeah.
especially at a live event like
To
that.
be fair, Dave insisted, I'll do all the boring stuff.
Yeah, take the admin away.
That's where the fire exits. And again, with our partners, our commercial partners, they become part of that. Yeah. And that's because we are gathered around a subject. We're gathered around all things automotive, and
Which remains very much at the heart of everything you do.
absolutely, and it's a very changing world. So it's dynamic as a result. It's dynamically unstable. More happens, so people want to gather around and talk about it. And whether they're gathering around as an enthusiast at home, us who are in the thick of it, or somebody marketing some specific product or service around it, we all want to get together because we've got a lot to talk about.
That's what it seems like. That's what the brand actually is. It's the community, it's the people, it's the love for the same thing rather than...
We're very much a portal to it.
Yes.
And that's what we've always wanted to be and what we've worked very hard to create. That's why it's not hung on one particular name or face. It is its own place. And you can gather there and gather around a very exciting, changing subject commercially right now, whatever your position, your relation to that subject is, which makes it, it's a talking place.
And that's where brands really like it, because it's a really highly engaged, really authentic and loyal community that is growing, all the time. And it allows them to put their products and services in front of those people, wherever, and multiple different kind of medias, and whether that's kind of online or offline now, and that's the key thing about the event was giving audience the opportunity to kind of look and feel our cars and often the people as well.
That came out wrong.
But then
I'm just saying, I don't remember that bit.
But then the other side is obviously with the people there, the brands want to be there, and that's where kind of you can tell some amazing stories online, and you can create some amazing content. And then you can take that and position that in a live event, and it's incredibly powerful. We saw that with, Ineos and Bridgestone, where their content kind of came alive at the event, and I think there's a lot of brands, there's a lot of equity that's built up around that.
Do you think as well, in an increasingly digital world, and it's so powerful, it's so fast, bearing in mind I also run a production company, a TV production company, and they cannot believe the pace at which these guys work. They're insanely jealous.
Wow, really?
Because we'll often all get together. So I have like a barn that we'll get together in. And the TV guys, you'll come up with an idea, a project, and you'll work it up in a development department, and you'll hawk it around, sometimes for a year. And a broadcaster might like it, but they're not in a position financially to commission it, but they don't want anybody else to have it, so they'll stall it. It's really tough. Whereas these guys will sit around and think, hey, this is a good idea. Dave, is this a good idea? Yeah. Do you reckon somebody might want to, would anybody want to sponsor that or get involved? I'll go find out. And within a week, it'll be done and on.
That's brilliant.
And TV
that kind of
can't believe it. Oh, it's fabulous.
Short process, because we were talking about earlier about you've now in-housed everything.
Yeah.
You don't outsource anything, and that must make that journey even shorter as well. You can just come and try things and experiment much quicker.
Yeah. Creatively, again, I can't speak to all the clever stuff he does, but on the creative side of it, oh god, yeah, it's the speed. It's also being able to try stuff. We have a very forgiving audience. They're sort of along with us, and we get feedback immediately, and that stuff's absolutely priceless. But I suppose where I was going was that in that digital space where we can act at that speed, where we can, the creative can be just, bosh, here we go, let's make it. But in that digital world, people love the physical reality of it. And so when we had that first event, we did film around it. We're doing another one this year. We will create content around it because it's letting us know that it's real. It exists in the 3D world, and I think people want that. Brands want that. People
It's
want
the biggest
to be
thing
real.
is like a community. Ultimately, whether you're at it from a brand perspective, a consumer perspective, it's just fun to be a part of. And when you come together and have those live events, you put faces to names. You get to create. You get to sort of grow those connections you have into something that's a bit more tangible.
Breaking that glass screen barrier, isn't it?
Yeah.
From
And
brands and consumers.
which everyone
At
wants.
the risk of saying something, I'm going to shut up in a minute because this whole conversation
It's
is
a podcast,
it's above my pay grade. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I just want to float something that, again, from my soft, cuddly media side of things, as regards the marketing aspects of what we do, which is what we've become, it's what we are now. That content, that information, that stuff we're bringing to our followers, our people, they want to know. As I'm a keen runner, and if somebody's in the pub telling me about a new pair of trainers that will give you X, I want to know about that.
Tell me about the Hokers.
Again, in the market, in the automotive world, especially when it's as fast changing as it is now, we don't know what it's going to be in 20 years' time. I do. Generally, people don't. that information, it's information. It's stuff people want to hear about. Everybody's winning. Somebody wants that information put across, but the people receiving want to know about it. So that kind of feels good.
It's
It helps
interesting that you
community thing.
try and deny your position in this podcast and say that, I don't know as much as Dave here, but that has been said on this podcast so many times by people in marketing. So
She's copying. I just listened to one episode. I'm going to hit that line. That sounds brilliant.
Well, that did well.
I was going to say it's an insightful thought. That's one that props up a lot.
It is
But
one
it is
that
true.
pops-
You want that. I want to hear about this stuff because it's around my enthusiasm, my passion.
Well, exactly. And I think especially, we're primarily focusing on performance marketing, which is very data-driven, very digital. And then, there's the brand marketers, which, you could probably argue you kind of both sit on both sides of that, in that kind of way. And people that come on and they say, I'm not a performance marketer. Why am I here? Why am I here?
They're always wrong when they say that. They always are.
I try and justify their reason to be here, and then I tell them why they're here. Yeah, but I think, if you're measuring any success of anything, you're effectively a performance marketer.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, all brands want some element of performance output. Whenever we do a campaign with anyone, they're looking for what the effect that has on their business, whether that is how that affects their brand positioning or the perception, or whether it's just straightforward, well, how many sales did we get out of this? So there's always an element of performance with whatever marketing we experience anyway.
Yeah, measurement scopes differ, but ultimately measurements at the core of
Yeah,
these
exactly.
things.
Yeah.
Well, speaking about measurement, let's go on. And we do ask all of our guests something that is overrated and underrated within their industry. So, I mean, you can take this as broadly as you like, but let's start with overrated. We've spoken about some of the underrated, the live shows and that digital and physical barrier that we're breaking. But overrated in terms of video and content production or connecting with your communities. What doesn't work? What's done too much? And what are people relying on that they really shouldn't?
I still think that in our space there is a massive over-reliance from brands on glamour metrics, on things like subscriber numbers, how many followers you have and things, and we find that our Facebook group is incredibly well followed, but actually the engagement isn't nowhere near as high from those other niche channels, but also our YouTube channel is incredibly engaged. In terms of proportionality. But so I always find it's a bit odd to keep seeing our numbers against other people's numbers, and that to be a possible reason for people making decisions, I guess. I certainly think the flip side, what's underrated is the value, the quality of the audience and the engagement level, and how, again, deep in terms of kind of sentiment that they're producing, all these things that are not incredibly tangible, but and not as measurable, but are there. View count's king. Engagement you can track and you can look at and really get a sense of that community. I honestly think that followers and subscribers are almost irrelevant sometimes. So that's what I would say is most overvalued from what I see. And then I guess what else in terms of kind of what else we're seeing, potentially the emphasis that in the automotive industry there is, I guess, any new toy that comes along, TikTok's one of them. I think that is really, it's always very interesting, and for us it's viewed as an extra distribution channel. We look at it as this is great if we can get to more audiences. But again, it's drilling down into the value of that audience. It's drilling down into kind of what people are actually doing on the platform and how relevant that is for us as a brand, but also the people that power our brand, which are the advertisers. And that is something that I'd say is in the holding pen at the moment. And we're still evaluating how strong that is. And I think that is often a little bit overvalues those kind of those channels in particular. Just off the top of my head there.
Yeah, no, I mean it's interesting to hear about channels as well, because I know that you have a large following across all different social platforms. But we would like to talk about kind of the leaning on YouTube and how that served your community and helped you transform the business. I mean, maybe you could talk about actually the transition you've made from, a content platform to now like a marketing, media, production, full house, trying to do as much as you can kind of platform as well. I mean, what's that transition been like?
Well, it's been quick. I think if we were sitting here talking probably only 18 months ago, we'd say we're very much a social publisher. We have, we hang everything off YouTube and we distribute via our various kind of social channels. I think now what we say is that we're a bit of a automotive kind of media powerhouse, because what we did is last year we made the call to bring production in-house. And so what we did, instead of setting up our own production unit, we had an incredibly good outsourced. We outsourced to a business called Centric Creative, who produced like the premium quality automotive material. They were responsible for all of our video, and what we did is we brought them in house. So we acquired that business, and we did it for a couple of reasons. One was to control our own output, so obviously to be able to keep powering the channel with as much video as we could, to be able to scale that as much as possible, but also to be able to offer all of our brands that we work with and the market white label video solutions to the same level of quality and engagement that we get on DriveTribe. So, whether that's kind of how-to videos for people's own websites, whether it's full kind of car launches, which we've done for brands, on their own kind of channels, that made perfect sense for us. And again, was an organic kind of evolution of the business. And then what we decided to do was, as if that wasn't enough last year, we decided to launch the DriveTribe Live. And that was very much to leverage everything that we had built on social, that community, that engagement that we're getting, and to be able to deliver that engagement and give them something something tangible that they could go and look and feel and be part of. And it was a runaway success. And we now have this great business where we've got full in-house white label video production on one side. We've got marketing, mass distribution, and content creation in the middle. And then you've got kind of talent, assets that can be leveraged, and that's mainly kind of the vehicles that we have. And then also live events. So brands, again, what that allowed was for two things. One was the audience were able to kind of get involved in more things, which was great for them. But brands also could come with us and come with where the audiences were in more ways. And that, again, plays back into the original question of they want access to all of that, not just, little bits and bobs. And they do. There's tactical marketing here and there, but in the main, they want to be intertwined with a brand like DriveTribe. And we're giving them the opportunity to do that in a way that feels very organic to the growth of the brand. And so it's been quite a busy year to say the least. But and we're growing each part of that business as we go and looking for more opportunities as well. So we continue to kind of see what else is out there.
I think when those first jobs started coming in, where we're acting as a creative agency in those instances, where people they're judging the quality of the content, they don't want distribution, and that's fine, because that was a significant moment for us. We know we're good at what we do, and the data tells us we are. And people watch our stuff because it's well made. But for partners to be coming to us to commission white label stuff, as you call it, did I get that one?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I just threw that in. That was really
like you've got your
significant.
teacher here just checking your work.
Use trust transfer. Use trust transfer.
I'm going to try. I can't think of how to get it in. I'm going to try.
Is it a bit of a balancing act when you bring in those more like business to business offerings for partnerships, but then also being conscious of making sure the consumers and the viewers you've got in that community remain engaged? And I guess DriveTribe Live's another offering on that front. Richard, you mentioned data and how what the data is saying, but is it a bit of a balancing act between how much stake gets put into data versus creativity? How do you go about finding a happy medium? That's
become so relevant for us. There is such a balancing act to be done between creativity and what the data is showing, and it's a tricky tightrope to walk, because essentially all creators initially base their channels on kind of what they want to produce themselves or what they think people will watch. So it's gut feel. It's not based on research papers or analytics. They just kind of create channels. And we based ours, solely on kind of gut feel about what Mike would come up with, what crazy ideas Richard would come up with, and what we were able to kind of film in a way that kind of allowed us to produce as many videos. But now, ultimately you're a slave to the algorithm, right? You've got to play the algorithm game, and you've got to understand more and more of what audiences are doing and what YouTube's doing and how they're changing things. And it means that you've got to look at creative and then look at data and actually change things almost. We put out videos and they just runaway successes. And sometimes you go, well, it's just because it's great creative. But sometimes you look at it and go, why? Why did that happen? And there's nothing kind of, again, tangible that you can look at and go, that's why, and then you can copy, rinse and repeat. It's more of a, humans, obviously, what data, you can't rely too much on data, because data doesn't take into account that humans are unpredictable. And they might just be watching something for no apparent reason that just then gets scaled and again gets onto the YouTube kind of, blows up and all the rest of it. So we view both as super, super important. And actually, what we're finding in our space is that there are now almost everyone's got a department on each side. You've got creative over on one side who are, looking at how do we entertain our audience, keep our, what's next kind of thing. And then on the data side, looking at all of the data points possible. And I think it's still limited in terms of what you can do. There's really interesting new technologies and AI that's coming in that, may well give us more access to kind of, why humans interact the way they do on social media. But marrying those two is super important. And if you can get that right, there's some brands that absolutely nail it, and some brands that think, the opposite way. They go, let's think thumbnail, title first, and then the video second, because it's all well and good if you've got an amazing video, but if you don't get the thumbnail and title right, no one's going to watch it.
Particular strength of DriveTribe's, I think, looking through the YouTube.
I hope so.
I've been through some of the arguments when they're discussing them. It's absolutely terrifying. It's the most intense I've ever seen people be. Honestly.
Do you have much say there, Richard? Because it's often yourself that ends up there.
Whatsoever. No, neither would I want to have. No, I'm very, very. I mean, Dave would say I'm very light touch with DriveTribe and have to be, because they're great at what they do. But no, I wouldn't go near thumbnails. I wouldn't even suggest any. I'd be too shy because it would be wrong.
It's an art
I'd be
form. It's an absolute art form. And even,
a job in it of itself.
It is. And we very much have someone in house whose job is to create, thumbnails, titles, and make sure that as the videos go out and as you can see the views either, falling a little bit or rising a little bit, to make changes to those thumbnails and titles as you go. And the changes you can make and the difference you can make to the performance of those videos just through those really, small things is incredible.
It's mental. I mean, I hear other kind of YouTube creators talk about this. I mean, it's basically you have to judge a book by its cover kind of thing. People, it's the same as a book cover, a magazine cover, anything that you're going to pick up and dedicate your free time to. You want to know in a split second whether you're going to be clicking on it, watching it, reading it, going to be interested in it. And I mean, so I know we've spoken about how data and creativity can feed into each other and work, but I'm reading a lot at the moment about people thinking that algorithms and trying to work towards these algorithms is harming creativity because you're producing content or output that will succeed with any social media algorithm. I mean, do you find it harms creativity in any way?
It's a balancing act for sure. I think you can still be super creative and play the algorithm game. I think it's, again, I understand why it exists, and it's difficult though because 1 minute you'll be told this is what YouTube in particular is pushing. So you create kind of assets based on a video, based on what YouTube is saying it's pushing. You do just that, and it bombs, and that's where it's a real tricky call because you've just spent a lot of resource and time creating this thing that you thought was going to do really well. And it's tricky. It's an evolving thing. We're constantly looking at data and what we're getting out of kind of YouTube and what the algorithm's doing and how it's manipulating kind of content and what it's pushing and what it's not, and and new products that it's launching that are meant to be the next big thing. But ultimately, I still think the creative is probably the most important. Ultimately, people are there to be entertained, and you've got to produce entertaining material, and I think DriveTribe's really good at that because we tend to lean on, obviously, Richard's kind of heritage of entertainment first, metal second, and that's kind of where we position ourselves. And I think we do quite a good job of doing that.
And I think in terms of algorithms or anything else, any creative process needs those parameters, limits, boundaries, stepping off points, because that's where you end up somewhere you wouldn't otherwise be. If there's no brief, whatever form that brief comes in, whether that's a brief directly from the person sitting next to you via an algorithm, directly from potential consumers, it doesn't matter. There has to be something to go for, and you need something to spring off. So yeah, just feed it in.
Does your approach, Richard, to I guess your sort of creative take, or I guess like sort of on-camera behaviour change depending on the project you're involved in when you're thinking about something like Grand Tour versus a DriveTribe video? And is it a difficult thing to make, or do you just try and remain as authentic as possible no matter what you're doing?
Authenticity is important. I mean, don't forget as well, we're gathered around a subject, and people are incredibly perceptive. They will know full well if it's not authentic. But in terms of manner of presentation, no. I think we've created, again, I'd love to claim it wasn't by accident, but we have claimed it's an incredibly nice place. That sounds ridiculous, but we certainly learned that again when we did our first live event. It was like one of those really nice parties where it doesn't matter where you stand, because you're always going to have a nice conversation with people. And it really was. That's just happened, and I don't know how. And it becomes a self-fulfilling thing. It's got its own momentum now. So we've ended up with, we're a nice bunch, DriveTribers, I mean, the broader DriveTribe community. So that does feed in. I wouldn't introduce, as a host of something on it, massive cynicism. It just wouldn't sit right. It doesn't sit right in where we are. So yeah, I think it's authenticity is the key thing.
Yeah. I wonder if at the end of the day you can tagline DriveTribe as one of Richard Hammond's better accidents.
Nice. Okay.
You've been sitting on that
I mean, to be fair, well, it was an accident to a point, and then Dave, well, when you became MD, that was just hilarious. I'd been thinking quietly, I think Dave should MD this, but I don't know, am I right? And then, you don't mind me saying, Dave, because you were commercial director in the old shape of it, he just rang me, Rich, look, I think I should be MD. I want to pitch it to you. I was like, yeah, okay, that's an interesting idea. I'd already thought. And then it was, we did it over Zoom, it was COVID times. It was like somebody got in my head and organised everything. And what were just stupid creative ideas to me explained why they might work. And one of them was including making you MD. But the point being, when you began, it's not entirely by accident now. That's what we're doing now.
You've got Dave to synthesise.
We have
I might have had a big accident at the beginning, but then it's been largely under control since then. We do think very carefully about direction and shape and form and reason for what we're doing.
It is a space though that it's so fast paced that actually opportunities just present themselves all the time, and it's great. And you never know what's around the corner. So our plans for 2-3 years time may never come to fruition because
what's absolutely glorious is the subject itself, all things automotive, is undergoing colossal change, and we are about to enter a monumental phase of discussion around the broader public's realising we can't go 100% electric for everybody. It's physically impossible. China won't release the rare earths we need, and even if they did, even if we continued the current trajectory, and I saw a graph the other day, by 2050, the majority of cars will still be internal combustion engined globally. Wow. And that's inevitable. That's even if we manage to continue on the current trajectory, which at the moment we're not going to because we can't get the materials to build these things. So we have to accept they're going to be around. There are fossil-free fuel options that can run in internal combustion engine cars. Synthetic fuel is a big bugbear of mine. That's going to be the way we need it, or we can't have fully electric. Anyway, my point being, massive swinging changes coming to that industry, and it's an industry that our buying decisions as consumers, that's the second biggest thing after our house, not just in terms of purchase, but carbon footprint, our contribution to what the world is going to do to get us out of the current situation. So we need to be informed. So the subject undergoing massive change, but at the same time, the means of communicating around it is undergoing the same change too. When I started in the media 30 6 years ago, there was no internet at all. So the means of communicating, sharing content, interacting with brands, with clients, with individuals, with people, with groups, communities, are also changing. So there's never been a more exciting time to be doing this.
No, and especially
everything's moving.
when you look at it from that sense as well, I guess you carry some level of responsibility to be informed too in that sense.
I think as individuals we do. I think we really, really do. And at the moment we're plodding along with a very narrow, blinkered view of it. Yeah. And we're I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but we are. Well, I'm not conspiracy theorist, but here comes a conspiracy. No, I'm genuinely not. But we are being sold for a vast raft of reasons a story that can't happen. So we need to be informed, because anybody looking to buy their next car, choose their next car, or how they use these are the biggest decisions you're going to make in terms of your contribution to how humankind can turn around and avert a disaster. So yeah, it is our duty to be informed about it. It's really important. It's more important than lots of other things.
Well, I mean, it's a huge thing, and I think from what you've spoken about DriveTribe today, it seems like DriveTribe is this pub. It's this pub where people come, they know who's going to be there, they get on with anyone
It's
there.
funny, you actually accidentally called it a pub once instead of a hub.
Oh yeah,
And I was like, I thought it made total sense.
Yeah.
I was like, that's exactly right. It's a pub.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it's a pub where, to bring it back to some kind of performance marketing, you have your brands, your consumers, the community, all gathered there because they love the same thing. And, it's important to be informed. But as much as we'd love to continue and sit here all day talking about this and talking about we don't know what's around the corner, it's the Resell Me a Pen challenge. So we have come to the end of the podcast and we get every guest to do this. And so this challenge is a twist on the Wolf of Wall Street Sell Me a Pen challenge. And we task our guests to resell an outdated object that has been updated with a newer technology. And for this extra special episode, we have chosen the ever famous Opel Kadett from the Top Gear. Oliver, you called him in the Botswana special. I did call him
because that's his name. That's why he's called
Oliver recently had a bit of got redone, did he?
Yeah,
he did. Yes, for Carfest, and also now has a girlfriend, Olivia.
Pre-Africa spec, I believe, is what I heard.
Yes, that's one of your smallest cog. Your other.
Yes, absolutely right. The workshop, which interestingly DriveTribe markets. So it's a hideous circularity to it all, isn't it? But yes.
So, I mean, are you ready? Who are you both going to be doing?
He's commercial.
Well, I'll take the where I think we'd pitch it and why, and I think, and then mainly because of content reasons, I'll give Richard 10 seconds to come up with a content idea.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm sure that's
a content idea. Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, because the challenge is to remarket it to today's audience.
Yeah, okay.
So
I can do that.
I imagine you won't find this difficult.
Dave, leave me 5 seconds. Go.
Well, I think this is quite a nice one because I think it's got a foundation in obviously its infamy with Richard. So I would remarket this as a vehicle which is all about the spirit of adventure, because I think that we can take that straight away from the heyday of Top Gear and what Richard obviously went on. I'd use this guy over here as my fronter. I'd use Oliver. I would absolutely kind of recapture the magic and the spirit of what happened in Africa all those years ago. And I'd very much target the baby boomers, Gen Z, Gen X and millennials. And I would absolutely go to town on partnerships with the likes of DriveTribe, possibly old Top Gear. And I would create some awesome content that, again, tells the stories and shows adventures with this car and how much fun it is. And the way we do that in terms of content is...
I think you're absolutely right, adventure. It's small against large. It's also a car that is a car forever, because you don't need to keep climbing the ladder of something ever more impressive. That actually is signalling to the world I care about simplicity, adventure, fitness for purpose, and I'm over time. But you gave me 2 seconds.
We have some amazing content.
2 seconds.
We have some amazing content ideas.
Yeah,
but...
well, I mean...
Diamonds are made under pressure, and then...
Well, there we go. I mean, out of the amount of times we've done this, we've done, 50, 60 odd episodes. This is the first time that someone's actually used their own company in their sales pitch.
See, that's why
That's why he's the man. That's why he's the MD.
I wish you'd been on that pitch. Rich, I want to be MD, and here's why. Okay. There is no choice.
But I love the take of a car forever. It's a good way to resell something
Well, you don't
as well.
need to keep climbing the ladder, you see, with a more impressive one. You can stick at that.
Well, Joe, up to you. What do you think? Have they resold?
Well, I mean, I always had a bit of a soft spot for Oliver, largely because when I was watching that Botswana special, everyone made so much fun of it, and I felt a little bit bad for Richard. So I quite enjoyed seeing it as well sort of be repurposed to its pre-Africa spec. So yeah, with that pitch, I get it in a heartbeat, but I will caveat that with prior to the pitch, I probably would get the car in a heartbeat anyway.
Yeah.
The Opel Kadett's one for me.
Sold,
It's an easy sell to sell it to someone who already kind of wants it.
Yeah. To be fair. Okay, well, let's class that as resold. And that is all we have time for. But thank you so much for coming onto the podcast, talking about DriveTribe, everything you're doing, and, you know, the kind of how you connect to communities and everything else.
Pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Absolute pleasure. You'll find we don't mind talking about DriveTribe.
You don't say.
We're loving it. We're proud of it. It's great fun.
If you want to find out more about the news and trends of the industry, head to performancemarketingworld.com to find out everything you need to know about brands, agencies, platforms, ad tech providers, everything you need to know about the performance marketing industry. The full video of this episode will be available on our website, so make sure to subscribe to be the first to see it when it comes out. I am your host, Lucy Shelley, multimedia editor at PMW. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.